I never imagined that the first moment I saw my daughter would also be when my entire world began to collapse. After 20 hours of agonizing labor, I barely had 3 minutes to hold my child before my husband, Tyler, snatched the birth certificate from the nurse's hand. With a cold, emotionless face, he uttered words that left me stunned. "Her name will be Margaret, after my mother, not that ridiculous name you chose." I gripped the edge of the hospital bed, my body still trembling from pain, but his words struck even deeper. I whispered, "No." But Tyler didn't even glance at me. He just smirked and shot me an empty look, as though I didn't exist. Then I heard the nurse standing beside me. Her voice was soft, yet as cold as steel. "Do you want me to tell him the truth?" "My name is Eva, I'm 28 years old and I live in Salem, Oregon." I'd always believed that if love was strong enough, any crack could be healed. But then I realized, some cracks aren't caused by lack of love. They're deliberately made to maintain control. Tyler and I had been married 3 years, after dating for 5. I once thought he was the ideal man. Gentle, intelligent, and ambitious. What I didn't see was that his love always had conditions, and that condition was always deferring to his mother, Margaret, the woman whose very shadow hung over our marriage like a curse. Tyler was a classic mama's boy, but I'd convinced myself love would change him. That mistake cost me months of loneliness during my pregnancy, and now this moment, as I lay helpless in a hospital bed, watching the man who vowed to protect me seize control over naming our child, as if it were his ultimate victory. I still remember the instant she was born, her eyes barely open, tiny hands curling into mine. I burst into tears, not from pain, but love. Yet I never expected that love to be one-sided. When the nurse brought the birth certificate, I was struggling to stay awake amid overwhelming exhaustion. Before I could even speak, Tyler jumped up, grabbed the pen, and spoke as if I weren't there. "Her name is Margaret, after my mother. No need to ask you." Every word cut deep like a knife. "You can't decide alone." I tried to protest weakly. He turned, sneering. "You just gave birth, you have no say in anything." My blood froze, and my chest felt crushed under a heavy weight. I wanted to scream, but my body was too weak. Just then, the nurse, a woman in her 50s, hair streaked with gray and eyes sharp, looked at me and leaned in slightly. "Do you want me to tell him the truth?" I stared at her blankly, confused. What truth? But her eyes held certainty and anger. She knew something I didn't. The room became unbearably silent. Tyler was still busy writing the name, oblivious to the changed atmosphere. "What truth?" I whispered. My eyes locked onto the nurse. She glanced at Tyler, then whispered so only I could hear. "Not here, but trust me. You need to know, before it's too late." I no longer felt postpartum pain. Not because I was healed, but because fear had overshadowed every physical ache. Tyler had planned this, and I began to suspect he wanted more than just control over our daughter's name. Something darker was at play. I turned to look at my daughter, sleeping peacefully in the cradle beside my bed. She was my only reason for holding on. But if I didn't act now, I might lose her. Not just her name, but to a conspiracy I couldn't yet fully grasp. The nurse gently squeezed my hand, silently promising support. "When he leaves the room, I'll tell you." And at that moment, I knew only one thing. Everything I'd trusted could be one perfect lie. I used to think the only disagreements between Tyler and me were about dinner schedules or cleaning chores, but no. Standing between me and my husband was always another woman, Susan, his mother. From the first moment I met Susan at Tyler's grandfather's birthday party, something felt wrong. I was 23, fresh out of college, and she examined me from head to toe with a look like I was a stain on her silk dress. "Oh, where do you work again? Oh, just a communications assistant?" Susan smiled bitterly, stirring her martini as if she were stirring my self-esteem. I smiled slightly, politely. But deep inside, I knew she'd written me off from the very first glance, just because I wasn't from a prestigious family, didn't graduate from an Ivy League school, and, most importantly, I wasn't the daughter of her best friend, the one she'd hoped to marry Tyler. Throughout our relationship, Susan never called me by my name. She called me that girl, or worse, the one with the frizzy hair. At first I tried to endure it. Tyler said his mother was difficult but meant no harm. He always defended her like a good son trying to protect his mother, forgetting that the person he should stand up for was me. My mom just wants what's best for me, Eva. Best by telling me not to wear red lipstick because I look like a bar waitress? He laughed awkwardly, rubbing my shoulder. She's older, not very tactful. Not tactful? No. She was deliberate. Every word, every glance from her was like a tiny needle, continually stabbing me over the years. When Tyler proposed, I thought things would change. I believed that as his legitimate wife, Susan would finally show me some respect. I was so naive. She went ballistic when she found out Tyler chose my engagement ring himself, a simple platinum band with a deep blue sapphire, my favorite stone since childhood, but to Susan, it was an insult. "You didn't ask me first?" she hissed upon seeing the ring at dinner at their house. "Mom, I thought this stone suited Eva. I chose it because I wanted something special." Susan shot me an icy glare. "Special? It looks cheap and gloomy. Wedding rings aren't Halloween jewelry." I wanted to walk away right then, but I sat quietly, gritting my teeth. I loved Tyler, and I foolishly believed if I was patient enough, she'd accept me. But when we bought our first home, all my illusions shattered. Susan criticized our neighborhood for being full of Chinese food smells, calling our small house a matchbox for mice. On moving day, she appeared with 3 bags. Not gifts, but to stay for 3 days. Because she was worried Tyler couldn't arrange furniture alone. I vividly remember her standing in my bedroom, flinging open my closet and saying, "My son deserves someone with better taste." Tyler just stood there, laughing it off as if his mother had cracked a joke. "Mom, come on." I waited for him to side with me, just once. But no. Whenever I objected, Tyler used the same excuse. "You know how my mom is. She loves me, she's just afraid of losing me." I cried one night when Susan called at 1 a.m. just to tell me I should get liposuction after giving birth if I didn't want Tyler to lose interest. I thought Tyler would be furious at her boundary-crossing phone call. But no. He sighed wearily. "You're overreacting." When I became pregnant, things got 100 times worse. Susan insisted on controlling every decision. What I ate, which doctor I chose, even the color of the nursery. I wanted to name our daughter Luna, a name I had adored since childhood. Tyler initially agreed, but after dinner at his mother's one evening, he turned to me, coldly. "I think Margaret sounds better. It's a family tradition." I stared at him, stunned. No one asked me. No one cared what I wanted. And now, lying here in this stark white hospital room, my daughter barely an hour old, Tyler stood there, smirking as if he'd won some petty game. "Her name is Margaret, you have no say." The nurse stood quietly by my bed, eyes cautious. I had the feeling she'd witnessed scenes like this more than once. And when she leaned in and asked me gently, "Do you want me to tell him the truth?" I realized things were worse than I'd ever imagined. Tyler wasn't just a coward hiding behind his mother. Perhaps he was also a traitor. And I would not stay silent anymore. Pregnancy is exhausting enough, but pregnancy under the suffocating supervision of a woman who wants to control even your breathing, that's hell. I found out I was pregnant one March morning, just as spring began in Oregon. The 2 red lines on the test made my heart leap inside my chest. I cried, not out of fear, but happiness. I imagined Tyler holding me tight, cherishing my growing belly like a treasure. But reality was different. Tyler stood there, staring at the pregnancy test like it was an electric bill. He didn't hug me. Didn't say anything for the first 10 seconds. Then he finally spoke, his tone flat. "Okay, I'll tell Mom." I froze. Not, "We're going to be parents," but, "I'll tell Mom." I should have realized at that very moment that from now on, this wasn't about Tyler and me. It was about Susan and me. 3 days later, she appeared at our house with a thick folder and a meal plan pinned together with a red clip. "This was my diet when I was pregnant with Tyler," she said, as if it were the Bible. I glanced through it, not a single line about fresh vegetables or fruits, just red meat, whole milk and deep-fried foods. "I gave birth to a perfect son. You should be grateful I'm sharing my secrets." I swallowed my frustration. "My doctor recommended I eat lightly, with lots of fruits and vegetables." "Which doctor?" she interrupted, eyes narrowing. Before I could reply, she turned to Tyler. "You're not planning to let her go to one of those cheap Medicaid clinics, are you?" Tyler didn't speak, he just nodded stiffly. That night, he handed me a list of 3 obstetricians his mother had already chosen. I looked at him, bitterly. "Tyler, I already have my own doctor. She's been monitoring my health for over a year." He sighed, as if I were making trouble. "Mom's just trying to help, stop being so sensitive." I began to feel trapped. Susan came by 3 times a week, unannounced. She checked the fridge, criticizing every meal I cooked. Once she even threw a box of strawberries into the trash, claiming cold fruits cause uterine contractions. "If you want my grandchild born prematurely, keep eating that garbage." I was going crazy. But Tyler took her side again. "Mom is just worried about you, Eva. You need to understand that." "Understand?" "Oh." I understood perfectly. Susan wasn't worried about me. She was manipulating my entire pregnancy as if I were just an incubator, and the baby was the only product she cared about. 6 months into the pregnancy, I started having strange dreams. In them, I was running from a burning house, holding a child, while Susan screamed from behind, "Give me back my grandchild, she's not yours." I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my back drenched in sweat, turning to look at Tyler. He slept soundly, facing away from me. We no longer embraced. We no longer talked like we used to. Tyler became coldly distant. He came home late, spoke less, and often avoided eye contact. When I confronted him, he snapped. "You're paranoid because of your hormones." I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a baby-making machine, being controlled remotely from Susan's living room. When I suggested naming our child Luna, Tyler frowned. "That name sounds childish. Mom doesn't like it." "This is my child too, not just your mom's," I said through gritted teeth. He snapped back. "If it weren't for my mother, I wouldn't be who I am. You should be grateful to her." Everything peaked at week 34, when I went alone to a prenatal checkup, because Tyler was busy in meetings. The doctor discovered my blood pressure had spiked, warning of potential preeclampsia. I came home, terrified, and told Tyler. He stared at me, then asked, "Did you eat something Mom warned you to avoid?" I exploded. "Did you even hear what I said? My life could be in danger, and your first thought is that I didn't listen to your mom?" He was silent, cold. No hug, no reassurance. At that moment, I knew our marriage had cracked. Not because of infidelity, but because I had become nothing in my husband's eyes except a shadow beside his mother. I counted down each day to my due date, not out of excitement for my child's arrival, but because I desperately wanted to escape the controlling grip tightening around my throat. But I never imagined that the day I awaited would become the day all secrets began to unravel. I never thought I'd have to fight for my right to motherhood. Right here in the hospital, just hours after giving birth. My body was still trembling from 20 grueling hours of labor. I lay there, head spinning, eyelids heavy, hands weakly clutching hospital sheets that still smelled of blood and antiseptic. But instead of holding my daughter in my arms, I watched Tyler, the husband I once trusted, quietly stand up, snatch the birth certificate form from the nurse's hands, and begin writing, as if I didn't exist. Name, Margaret Quinn. he read aloud in a firm voice, without even bothering to ask my opinion. I struggled to sit up, pain slicing through my body. "Tyler, stop, we agreed on Luna." He didn't even turn around. "You're not clear-headed enough to decide right now, get some rest." At that moment, the nurse, Maggie, a middle-aged woman with eyes sharp as razor blades, stepped firmly between us. She took back the documents from Tyler, gripping them tightly, her expression stern. "I need to confirm the identity of both parents before completing these papers." Tyler frowned. "I'm the child's father. That's enough." Maggie didn't back down. "And I need confirmation from her as the mother. You can't unilaterally fill this out." I clearly saw Tyler's face shift. From confidence to uncertainty, then embarrassment. He swallowed hard, glancing nervously at me. Instinct told me something was very wrong. Weakly, I whispered to the nurse, "You mentioned earlier there was a truth I should know?" She didn't answer immediately, instead holding my gaze for a long moment, before leaning in and whispering, "There's something unusual about the insurance paperwork. You need to check it now, before it's too late." I tried to shift my body, the pain from my episiotomy incision stabbing like a knife. Tyler stepped forward, his voice tense. "No need to cause a scene here. You need rest. I'll handle the paperwork." I stared at him, heart pounding. "Tyler, what did you do?" He clenched his fists, sweat glistening on his forehead. "I just rearranged some details, you wouldn't understand." "Then explain it so I can understand," I said, each word sharp, never taking my eyes off him. Maggie stepped aside, arms crossed. "I can bring you the insurance records right now, if you wish." Tyler suddenly snapped. "She just gave birth, can't you see that? This isn't the time." "No, this is exactly the time," I replied, my voice no longer trembling. "I want to see the records." Tyler laughed bitterly, eyes darting around anxiously. "This is ridiculous. You're doubting your own husband?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. Minutes later, the nurse returned with a thick folder. She flipped through each page in silence, until stopping at the line labeled Primary Parent. I held my breath. The only name listed, Tyler Quinn. Not mine. Not a single line. Not a single word. I went numb. My entire body went cold. "You removed my name from the records?" I asked, barely believing my own ears. Tyler lunged forward to snatch the documents, but Maggie quickly pulled them back. "No, this is evidence." "I didn't mean it like that," Tyler protested. "I was just trying to keep things clear, less complicated." I leaned back, clutching my stomach. "Less complicated?" He called removing me from motherhood less complicated? "You planned to take my child from me?" "No, I just thought if something happened, then..." I screamed. "If I died during childbirth? Is that the something you were counting on?" He stammered. "You don't understand. My mother," she said, "the lawyer advised..." I laughed bitterly, a laugh so cold it frightened even me. "Ah, Susan again. Your mother had her hand in this, didn't she?" Nurse Maggie gently placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "I'll report this to hospital management, and to your attorney if needed." Tyler stepped backward. His eyes had lost their confidence, they trembled. He looked at me as if, for the first time, he no longer held control. I wasn't trying to steal our child. I just thought, if you left me, I needed a way to hold on to something. I stared directly into his eyes. "I'm not an object, neither is my child, and you won't be holding on to anything." Maggie nodded at me. "We'll redo the paperwork. Your name will be listed in full as the legal mother, and I'll document all of this in the records." I nodded, tears pouring out, not from pain, but anger. Tyler had planned to erase me from my own child's life. Without the nurse's help, I might never have found out. At that moment, Tyler's phone rang. I glanced over. Caller ID, Susan. And I knew he wasn't alone in this scheme. Susan's call lasted just seconds, but it was the key that opened the gates of hell wide. Tyler didn't answer. He saw her name flashing on the screen and immediately hit decline, but I'd seen and knew he was hiding something. His expression wasn't anger or confusion, it was panic. I gripped the hospital blanket tighter, my postpartum incision throbbing, but the burning inside me hurt 100 times worse. "Tell me, Tyler. I want to hear you admit it. Your mother's involved in this, isn't she?" He breathed rapidly, avoiding my eyes. But I saw his fingers trembling as he tried to shove the phone into his pocket. Nurse Maggie stood nearby, arms folded, her gaze piercing straight through his weak defenses. "I'll ask you again, one final time. Did your mother orchestrate this?" I practically screamed. Tyler looked at me and finally broke. "Mom just wanted to help me. To be prepared, just in case." "In case what?" I left? I demanded custody? My voice cracked. "You planned to remove me from our daughter's life? Just in case?" Tyler sank into the chair beside my bed, his face drained of all color. He loosened his tie, repeatedly rubbing his forehead like someone cornered. "My mother hired a lawyer," he began, voice hoarse. "She said if you left, you'd use the child to trap me, to get revenge." I went numb. "I never gave you any reason to think I'd do that." He didn't answer. "So you just followed everything she said? Signed documents, altered insurance paperwork? Put only your name on the birth certificate?" He nodded slightly. I saw clearly in his eyes, not regret, but fear of being caught. "As long as you didn't know, everything would be fine. Mom's lawyer said courts usually side with whoever has documentation ready. You don't earn as much as I do. If we divorced, I'd have the advantage." I choked back tears. "So you erased my name from every document. You made me a stranger to my own daughter because of money and lawyers? Because my mother said it was the only way to protect me." I felt my heart skip a beat. "And what's the real motive?" I fixed my eyes on him, determined to pierce through his final mask. He stayed silent, but I wouldn't let go. "Tell me, Tyler, why does your mother hate me enough to take away my right to motherhood?" He leaned forward, bracing himself against some invisible pressure. "Because you never respected her." I laughed, a dry, hollow laugh that silenced the room. "Never respected her? I tolerated every insult, every time she barged into our home uninvited, every dinner where she called me the housemaid with a degree. I stayed silent for 3 years, and what do I get in return? A legal trap? She said you were trying to drive us apart. She couldn't accept you rejecting the name Margaret. She said if you didn't respect our family, you didn't deserve to raise my child." I felt like someone was strangling me. "And you? What do you think?" I asked, my voice low. Tyler looked away. "I don't know." "No, you do know. You know exactly. But you chose to listen to her. You chose to deceive me. You betrayed me while I was pregnant with our daughter." I was no longer crying. My anger had surpassed the pain. Maggie spoke up, her voice as hard as steel. "We'll redo all the paperwork. Eva will be the legal guardian. The old records will be sealed pending investigation for fraud." Tyler shot to his feet. "No! You're destroying my family." I looked at him, eyes cold as ice. "You destroyed it, Tyler, no one else." Right then the door burst open. Sophie, my older sister, rushed in. "Eva, are you all right?" I nodded but kept my eyes locked on Tyler. Sophie glanced at him, then back at me, suspicion in her gaze. "What's going on here?" I didn't answer. I said only one thing. Voice firm as stone. "Call the lawyer, right now." Just as Sophie finished calling the lawyer, Tyler's phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Susan. Another name flashed clearly on the screen. Betrayal, with a red heart emoji beside it. I saw Sophie glance quickly, her expression changing instantly. "Who is Betrayal?" she asked through clenched teeth. Tyler panicked, trying to shove the phone back into his pocket, but Sophie was faster. She snatched it away right in front of him, said nothing else, and unlocked it with his fingerprint. I remained seated on the hospital bed, clutching my daughter. feeling as though someone had sucked all the air from my lungs. I knew Tyler was hiding something, but I never imagined that. "Oh my God!" Sophie gasped, her voice shattering in shock. I swallowed hard. "What is it?" She turned the screen toward me. And I saw it. Messages, an entire thread. A conversation filled with innuendo, flirtation, and cruelty that made me nauseous. "I can't wait until she's gone so we can finally be together. After the baby's born, everything will be fine. Mom said as long as I have the paperwork, she can't claim any rights. She'll be left with nothing. She'll have no choice but to leave." My hands trembled violently. "You're having an affair?" I stared straight into Tyler's eyes, but he looked away. Sophie continued scrawling. "Eva, I think you need to see this." She stopped at a message with a photo. I looked. And my heart exploded. It was Betrayal, the daughter of Nancy Wilkins, Susan's best friend. She'd been to our house a few times, always complimenting Tyler for being such a respectable man, and often texting him about his work projects. I had naively assumed it was just polite conversation. Betrayal wore a thin nightgown, taking a selfie in bed, accompanied by the words, "Tonight, I wish you were the one lying next to me instead of her." I could barely breathe. "I was pregnant and you were with someone else?" Tyler reached out his hand as if trying to calm me down. "Eva, listen to me, it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" I screamed, my voice echoing in the sterile white room. "You secretly planned to take custody, removed my name from the insurance, and plotted with your mistress to erase me from your life? And you dare say it's not what I think?" Sophie threw the phone onto the bed, her eyes blazing. "You're a piece of trash, Tyler. Eva just gave birth. She hasn't even recovered yet, and you do this?" Tyler hissed back. "You don't understand. Eva, she never respected my mother. From day one, she looked down on her. So you erased me from my own daughter's life to replace me with a mistress chosen by your mother?" I whispered, my voice quiet but filled with rage. "Riel understands my mother better than you do. She respects tradition. She's willing to share everything for the common good." I laughed bitterly. "No, she's willing to share you. But me? I sacrificed my career, my body, my mental health. For what? To be betrayed when I'm at my weakest?" Tyler took a step forward, his eyes guilty like a child caught in a lie. "I never meant for things to go this far. I was just stuck between the two most important women in my life." Sophie tilted her chin, coldly. "Wrong. There are three. Your mother, your mistress, and your wife who just gave birth. And you chose to remove the only one who never betrayed you." Tyler had nothing left to say. He lowered his head, arms limp, as if every excuse had turned to dust. I slowly placed my daughter into the bassinet beside me, then climbed out of bed. Even as the incision burned painfully, I walked straight up to Tyler, looking him directly in the eyes, each word slicing like a blade. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed this child too. And I swear, Tyler Quinn, I'll never let you or your mother come near her again. Not as long as I'm alive." He opened his mouth as if to speak, but I'd already turned away. I didn't need explanations from someone who'd gladly sacrifice his wife for twisted loyalty to his mother and cheap personal desires. Sophie turned to Maggie. "We need a lawyer, and complete medical records, documenting everything." Maggie nodded immediately. "I'll contact the legal department, and Eva," she turned toward me, her eyes softening. "You're not alone. We'll ensure you have all the evidence you need to protect your daughter." I glanced at my sleeping daughter, her tiny face pink and peaceful, lips curled like a little angel. I leaned down, gently kissing her forehead, whispering, "I'll protect you, at all costs." I never imagined a birth certificate could make my heart twist so painfully. That document, cold, white, merciless, declared, "Eva doesn't exist. Not a mother. Not the creator of the precious life sleeping in the cradle beside me. Just a shadow crossed out. I walked toward the table, trembling with pain from the incision and fury. Tyler watched me cautiously, as though afraid I'd do something reckless. He said, "Eva, calm down. We can deal with this later." I didn't respond. I picked up the birth certificate, held it up in front of him, then tore it cleanly in half. No hesitation, no blinking. Nothing gets dealt with later. You chose to erase me from my daughter's life. Today, I choose to fight back. Tyler froze in shock. Sophie nodded, as though seeing daylight after a storm. Nurse Maggie tightened her lips, silently collecting the remaining paperwork, like a soldier prepared to defend the final line. I turned to Maggie. "I want to redo all the paperwork, with my name, with the truth." She nodded firmly. "You'll be the first to sign, and this time, no one will remove you from your rightful place as a mother." The click of heels echoed in the hallway. I turned, my heart instantly turning cold. "Susan." She strode into the room as though entering a board meeting, her gaze sweeping over each of us like she was appraising personal property. Her hair was neatly styled, her lips painted dark red, and disdain radiated from every step. "I heard there was some trouble," she said, her voice gentle but dripping with sarcasm. Tyler looked at his mother like a child caught stealing candy. Susan glanced at the torn birth certificate on the table, her lips tightening. "Ava," she began, trying to appear patient. "You're making a mess. This child needs stability. She needs someone sensible." I laughed bitterly. "Sensible? You mean someone who keeps quiet, looks the other way, and lets you and your son erase my legal rights as a mother?" Susan shrugged casually, as though discussing curtain choices. "You don't understand. You're weak, emotionally unstable. You're not fit to raise a child." Sophie stepped forward, blocking her path. "You have no right to say that. Eva gave birth less than a day ago, and you're already trying to take her child." Susan glared at Sophie, then turned back to me. "You have no money, no status, no support. Tyler is the only one who can guarantee a good future for this baby." I stepped closer to her, each step steady despite the lingering pain. "I have something you'll never have. Genuine love for her, not control, not ambition." Tyler stood between Susan and me, his gaze flickering nervously, face pale like someone suddenly exposed to harsh light. I stared directly at him. "Now's the moment for you to choose. Your family, or the truth. Your mother, or your daughter having both. Her parents." Susan cut in sharply. "Tyler, don't listen to her. I've sacrificed my entire life to get you here. Don't betray me for a woman who doesn't know her place." Tyler staggered back. I expected him to bow his head, to give in again. But this time, his gaze fell on Luna, our daughter, sleeping peacefully in her crib. For the first time, his eyes softened, his shoulders dropped. "Mom," he whispered, choking up. "I can't do this anymore." Susan spun around. "What?" "I was wrong. It went too far. I didn't think Eva would ever find out, but now I know what truly matters," she shouted. "Tyler, are you throwing everything away for a moment of weakness?" He turned toward me. "I'm sorry." I didn't forgive him, but at least I knew I'd just won the most important battle of my life. Not because Tyler suddenly woke up, but because I was no longer afraid of them. Susan gripped her handbag tightly, her eyes blazing. "You'll regret this. She'll destroy your life. She'll make you a failure." Tyler lowered his head, for the first time not fighting her, but for the first time not obeying her either. Susan turned sharply, storming out, leaving behind a room heavy with shattered pieces. I watched her leave, then turned to Nurse Maggie. "Now we start again. This time, with the truth. With my name legally recognized as Luna's mother." Maggie smiled gently. "We'll follow every procedure correctly. And no one will erase you again." I signed my name on the new birth certificate with hands still swollen from childbirth. But my heart was lighter than it had ever been since entering this marriage. Beneath the words, "Mother Eva Morgan Quinn," everything stolen from me was finally restored. No more false names, No more schemes. No more invisible control Susan had wielded around my neck like a rope. It ended here. But rebuilding my life? That was just beginning. After that day, everything happened faster than I expected. Maggie, the nurse who'd stood beside me from the start, became the witness, providing all necessary documentation to the family lawyer Sophie had called. Those detailed records, documenting every illegal action Tyler committed, from falsifying insurance documents to deliberately removing my name from the birth certificate, became the blade that cut through any chance he had of fighting back. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Tyler wasn't there. Susan wasn't waiting. Only Sophie, my sister, who stood by me like a wall when the rest of the world turned away. We went to her house in South Salem, where Luna and I would stay temporarily while the lawyer handled the divorce. Tyler called, repeatedly, texted, emailed, sometimes begging, sometimes blaming. He said it was a mistake, that his mother had manipulated him, that he never really intended to erase me from our daughter's life. I didn't respond. Because if there's one thing I learned after everything that happened, it's this. No one can destroy you unless you allow them to cross your boundaries. The divorce was finalized within 2 months. Thanks to the evidence gathered at the hospital, along with testimony from Maggie and Sophie, the court granted me full custody of Luna. Tyler was allowed visitation rights, but only supervised, and he never once dared show up after the verdict. I heard Betrayal left him. She disappeared without explanation as soon as she realized Tyler wouldn't get custody or a share of assets, since our marriage records showed clear signs of abuse. As for Susan, she called once, her voice calm, still trying to use her model mother-in-law tone as though nothing had happened. Ava, we both made mistakes, but Luna is still my granddaughter. I hope you can understand and forgive. I smiled softly. I forgive you, but you'll never see her again. I blocked her number immediately afterward, and blocked all of Tyler's relatives too. I didn't need false sympathy from people who stood silently while I cried out helplessly. 6 months later, I officially changed my daughter's surname, Luna Morgan, no longer carrying the name of the man who tried to erase her mother's existence. I rented a small apartment near downtown, close to daycare and my new workplace. The job wasn't glamorous, just an internal communications position at a real estate company. But I did it well. I made money. I raised my child with my own 2 hands, and dignity no one could ever strip away. Each morning I dressed Luna in tiny clothes, kissed her forehead, and saw clearly in her eyes something I thought I'd lost. I was still tired, still had nights when Luna cried endlessly, when I couldn't sleep, moments when I was so exhausted that I just wanted to sit on the floor and cry. But I had no regrets. I chose my daughter, I chose myself, and that was the best decision of my life. One afternoon, when I picked Luna up from daycare, her teacher handed me a messy drawing. A colorful picture, a mother holding a little girl, surrounded by blue sky and bright sunlight. The teacher said, Luna said this is her mommy. She said mommy is her protector. I held the drawing, my throat tight. Yes, I protected her, from the very person I once thought would raise her alongside me. Now, as I stand by my apartment window, looking out at the city lights, I no longer see darkness. I'm no longer the Eva who trembled, begging her husband to see her as a human being. I'm Eva Morgan, a mother, a woman betrayed to her core but who stood up again, head held high. And if someone ever asks me if I forgive Tyler, I'll say this. I don't need to forgive anyone. I just need to live a life of my own choosing. Eva's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone who wears the cloak of family has good intentions. When people exploit family ties to manipulate, betray, and strip away a mother's rights, silence is no longer a virtue, it's surrender. Eva chose to stand up, protecting herself and her daughter, despite pain, despite loneliness. She showed that women are stronger than many assume, and sometimes, the bravest act is simply walking away and starting again, for your child, and for yourself. What do you think about Eva's story and her courageous choice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more real-life emotional stories and profound lessons about family.